wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Who are you all? A student? The Honorable Dean of Faculty of Islamic Study, Dr. Haji Tamyiz Mukarram MA, the Honorable Head of Islamic Study, Dr. Rahmani Timorita Yulianti, MAG, the Honorable Head of Islamic Economic Study Program, Ibu Soya Sobaya, SAEMM, Chief Coordinator, Chief Coordinator of this agenda, Bapak Rizky Anfani, SAE MSE, our guest lecturer today, Prof Dr Jarita Duasa, all of lecturers, all of students, and all of participants who join this event from Zoom meeting and YouTube. Okay, I'd like to welcome to all here. My name is Junaidi Safitri. I am a lecturer from Islamic Economics Study Program at FIA and today I will be moderator for this agenda. أولاً نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفر ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله لا نبي ولا رسول بعده اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد نبيا ورسوله ربي زدنا علما ورزقنا فهما. First of all, let us thank to our God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has given us His mercy and blessing, so that we can join this virtual meeting in such a good condition and a good situation. Second, salawat and salam be upon our honorable Prophet and Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family and his followers. And I don't forget to thank you very much to our speaker today, Prof Dr. Jarita Duasa, for making your time in this early morning. We are here pleased to see you with us on this opportunity. Okay, in this agenda, we will discuss about an interesting topic in Islamic macroeconomics, which is fiscal policy in Islamic macroeconomics. And our guest lecturer today, Prof. Dr. Jarita Duasa. She is an economic lecturer in Department of Economics, Kuliah of Economic and Management Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. Teaching undergraduate and also postgraduate program. Her research area is in public finance, business economic, macro and microeconomic, business mathematics, and econometric. Yes. Of course, she has published number of research papers, several awards in research, several number of publications in set reference journal, as well as book and chapter in book. All of participants and Prof. Dr. Jarita Duasa. Before we enter the main section, let's begin our presentation and our guest lecturer today by setting al-basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yes. Before we enter the main section, I want to give a brief overview about what we will discuss today. We will discuss today is about fiscal policy in Islamic macroeconomics. We know fiscal policy is the use of the government revenue collection, tax cut, and expenditure to influence a country's economy The most important element of Islamic fiscal policy is we know in Islamic fiscal policy is zakat and urs, yeah, which as a form of our shift is one of the basic article of faith in Islam. In this perspective, zakat cannot be regarded as a tax for its economic effect different from those of the taxes. Zakat has been made obligatory by Allah immediately. The Holy Quran contains several verses which declare zakat obligatory upon the Muslim. And in this opportunity, and we will discuss about the fiscal policy in Islamic macroeconomic, that all of the deep overview. Now we are headed the main section, the lecture section. We will have Prof Dr. Jarita Duasa lecture about a topic, and we have proximately to our lecturer, Prof Dr. Jarita. So in this agenda will be conducted until 11 in Indonesian times. So the Q&A section will conducted after that until 11:30. And I'm sure Prof. Dr. Jarita,
yes,
this guest lecture, it will to be conducted interactively. So we have all participants in this virtual meeting here to be more communicative. If you don't mind, Prof. Dr. Duasa, would you deliver a presentation in bilingual language, in the English and Malay language, Prof. Jarita?
Okay, I'll try my best. Yeah.
Yes, in English or in Malay language, combination about that language, yeah.
Yeah, inshallah, yeah.
Okay, for all participants, if you have any question to our speaker today, you may ask her immediately in Q&A section. And you can also write your question in the chat Zoom as well. Okay, the first section, presentation from Professor Dr. Jarita Duasa. Okay, Prof. Jarita, are you ready?
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll open the slide first, yeah?
The time is yours, Prof.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Prayitna, right?
Junaidi, Prof.
Brother Prayitna and Dr. Junaidi. Okay, Junaidi Safiri. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Rizky, Brother Rizky, and all the staff as well as all the students. Thank you very much for invitation that's given to me, the opportunity in order to sort of like trying to give some input, or knowledge on this Islamic fiscal policy from the research and also from the teaching that I've done before in the university. So thank you very much for the invitation for the IIU University, Jogja. And I'm very grateful to be here this morning. Yeah, inshallah, I will try to give my best contribution to the student in terms of the knowledge. And basically, I will start first with the slide. I noticed that you are given a lot of time for me to present. Inshallah, I'll try to utilize all the time. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So that's all right. So this is the title, of my presentation. Okay, so these are the title also given by me, basically on fiscal policy. But I believe that in macroeconomics, there are many other topics that has been discussed before. I've looking at the list already, and I find that actually there are many things that can be talked about in macroeconomics, from the theory part until to the policy part. And this fiscal policy is one of the policies that are discussed in macroeconomics in order to solve the economic problem, particularly macroeconomic problem faced by a country, particularly Muslim countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and all other Muslim countries. So therefore, my slide or my presentation is only focused on fiscal policy. As I think most of you know, there are two types of policies, right? In macroeconomics that can be implemented by government. One is fiscal and the other one is monetary policies. But I will just focus on this fiscal policy so that we can go deeper on how Islamic looks at this type of policies, whether it's the tools used in this policy is acceptable in Islam, or is whether it's different from what has been implemented before during the prophets. So let's look at the outline of the discussion. If you look at the outline of the discussion, there are a few things that I'm going to pass here. The first part is I'm looking at the fiscal policy framework in Islamic economics, where we look at the definition, what types of fiscal policy that we have, what are the goals, the objective of implementing this policy, the function, and also the instrument. And then I will go deeper on the component or the tools of fiscal policy. One is on government expenditure. We will look at the classification of government expenditure, of government spending. And then what are the Islamic guiding principles on this government expenditure. And the second tools that normally used in fiscal policy is taxation, or in other words, how to raise revenue or public revenue. So in this case, we will also look at what are the sources that can be used in order to finance government spending or to get government revenue, and what are examples that tools or sources of government revenue used during Prophet's time, during Sahabat times, and we try to compare it also with the current types of source of government revenue or the tools used in order to get government revenue. And we try to also make comparison between this taxation imposed or by the current or the conventional government with the the Islamic proposed taxation, which is based on the Islamic Sharia. So in this case, we also try to try to differentiate between the progressive tax and also the taxes imposed by the Muslim country on this particular wealth and also the properties or the idle assets in order to collect government revenue. Having said that, we will also look at the effective tax policy, looking at what are the objective of having tax in terms of efficiency, in terms of the what we call it allocation, distribution, etc., and what are the guiding principles on this taxation. And the last part of my presentation, I will just try to link a bit on the zakat and fiscal policy, because zakat is a bit different from the tools of fiscal policy, where the zakat is more into what we call it religious tax, which is what we call it has been stated as compulsory and has been considered as a must based on Quran and Sunnah. Okay, but still we could say that zakat can become tools of fiscal policy. If we'll try to look at this institution of zakat, and zakat as a fiscal measure, and what is the function of zakat in fiscal policy, right? So I will start first with this framework of Islamic economy in the issue of fiscal policy. Okay, in a very general, what we call it, objective of Islamic economy. Every economy has have their own objective, definitely, right? So, of course, every economy tries to achieve economic well-being, yeah, social justice, yeah, fair distribution of income, freedom of individual, yeah. In other words, everything is trying to achieve a social welfare, yeah, social welfare. But for the Islamic economics, okay, the difference between conventional and Islamic economics is that, okay, where we're talking about well-being, social justice, equal distribution of income, yeah, freedom of individual, within the context of social welfare, we are adding something which is more compared to conventional economies, by looking at not only this life but also in the hereafter. So this is the basic difference between any policy in Islamic economics as compared to conventional economy. So in other words, it means that in fiscal policy, in every Islamic economy is a bit different from conventional economies, where we are not just trying to achieve the world welfare, the worldly welfare of the society, but we are also concerned on what is in the future or in the hereafter. Yeah, so basically these are the difference. So basically, Islamic economics is the one that where we say that we want to excel in this world and hereafter. The basic thing is that we have to adhere with the Sharia law. Yeah. So Quran and Sunnah is a very important revelation that we must follow, okay, in order to achieve this objective of welfare in the world and the hereafter both. Yeah. So the framework of fiscal policy must also follow this foundation or philosophical foundation of Islamic, not only the material, but the spiritual welfare. So our concern is not only to have higher GDP, to have everybody happy with the goods and services produced in the economy, materially, but also we are also looking at something which is spiritual in terms of welfare. So our concern is not just the outside or the outside materials, but also the spiritual things, yeah, in order to boost or in order to success not only in this world but in the hereafter. So therefore, the fiscal policy also must be based on this. So that's the difference between conventional and Islamic economies. Yeah. So our basic foundation, it must be based on Quran and also Sunnah, yeah, of Prophet Muhammad. Okay, so therefore, when we say that Islamic economics is a differ from conventional economics in terms of the implementation of fiscal policy, so it's also differ in many things, such as like the concepts. Yeah, we have something additional. The goals also different, a bit different. Yeah, we also have instrument could be different, and also the mechanism used can be also different, right? So in terms of definition, if you look at definition itself, the concept of fiscal policy, all right, fiscal policy we know is using basically two tools, right? Okay, what government spending, government expenditure, and also tax or revenue. Normally we call it tax, yeah. So revenue here could be also sourced not only from tax but also from others, yeah. But mostly we just refer to G and T, yeah, government spending and also taxation. All right. Okay, so in order to achieve this macroeconomic objectives such as like economic growth, yeah, less unemployment, yeah, higher what we call it export and net export, everything that we want to achieve in macroeconomics. Okay, using fiscal policy, there will be two types of fiscal policy that normally implemented. So either it's deliberate, yeah, fiscal policy, or it's automatic what we call it tools for change in government spending, especially when we talk about government spending. It can be discussed by the government, it's determined by government, or it could be automatic. Automatic change in the tools of government spending. So both of these will trying to stimulate aggregate demand and therefore to increase our economic growth. Because as we learn aggregate demand, we learned before, if most of you have learned about this aggregate demand before, right? So the aggregate demands consists of C, G, I, investment, C is consumption, G is government spending. So G is a very important element that we use in fiscal policy. So when we impose G, government spending, it could be, as I mentioned, it could be deliberate or it's being planned by government, okay? Or it could be an automatic changes, in a government spending, or this is the one that we call built-in stabilizer, okay? So these are the concepts that we normally use in government spending use as fiscal policy. Okay, but going back to what happened in history in 18th and 19th century, when we talk about this implementation of government, or in other words, government intervention in the market, we know that invisible hand has been populated by Adam Smith, saying that we should have minimum government intervention. And this has been practiced by classical economists in 18th and 19th century, because they believe that market must be left alone without government intervention, and it can correct itself, and with the demand and supply, basically we find that it will be efficient without government intervention. And it can maximize the social welfare. But then we know that these classical ideas, it seems to be fail, especially when we have a Great Depression in 1930s. In 1930s, when the classical theory has been proven wrong, and we find that we have a problem of unemployment, we have a bank failure, people shutting down businesses because of the depression. So in other words, it means that this is where we found that market cannot actually left alone. Market cannot be left alone without government intervention. And this is where Keynes developed a new macroeconomics framework that's saying that aggregate demand, rather than the supply of input, is a driven factors that will determine our GDP or economic growth. So aggregate demand has to be pushed. And how to push this aggregate demand? We need government intervention. So this is where we came up with government spending. We need government spending in order to increase aggregate demand, because when government spend, okay, there will be more job available, more production produced. So this is where we find that in a free market economy, in the market system, okay, even though we say that according to Adam Smith, it can be worked by itself, it can be corrected by itself, but there are times where we found that the market might fail. So in order to boost the macroeconomics objective, in order to achieve macroeconomic objective, we need also this government intervention in terms of government expenditure. So this is where we start with the application of fiscal policy. So the application of fiscal policy is when we started from this 1930s depression, where we came up with the new ideas that we still need government intervention. So fiscal policy is one way on how we try to apply this government intervention, especially by using government spending that boosts aggregate demand. All right. So the question now is that, is fiscal policy is allowed in Islamic economy? Okay, what we could see from our research is that previously, in a very early Muslim theories, about what we call it levy, or about the what we call it zakat has been practiced before during Prophet times, during Sahabat times. We find that most of the time that the Muslim theorists argue that the government cannot charge any other levy except zakat. So this is actually early what we call it early thinking of Muslim theories, about this government charging taxes or other levy, on the private properties. For them, this what we call it imposition of levy to properties or private properties is unjust and un-Islamic. Okay, because taxes has been practiced before, by prophets, except only zakat. Only zakat. So in this case, one group of theories saying that this fiscal policy in terms of tax imposed cannot be actually imposed. Okay. However, later on, we find that there is a refute of this point of view that argue that zakat is probably is one of the fiscal policy, but it can be only implemented to a specific situation, to a specific people. All right. So in other words, in this case, zakat is very construed to the minimum, or it's actually just to a specific, what we call it, situation. All right. And it means compulsory to the Muslim, to pay zakat. Okay. And this particular, what we call it, zakat is very important only to what we call it, it will be distributed only to a specific people. So because of this, we find that there are many other objectives that the government would like to achieve, for example, for the public interest, that cannot be achieved just using zakat money. So in this case, we find that having zakat, sometimes we found that there are times that is insufficient for us to provide, for example, like public goods, such as like education, health services, where we found that later on, some Muslim scholars argue that this particular fiscal policy could be used as one of the tools, in order to what we call it, to increase the economic growth, aside of zakat. So zakat is just is considered as compulsory on the specific people, but then later on we found that fiscal policy is considered as also can be implemented, on top of zakat, especially when we have insufficient fund or revenue in order to boost the economic activity, especially to help the poor, or in order to improve the standard of living of the society, including the provision of public goods, including what we call it, to improve the facilities or the infrastructure. So all this can be taken from the revenue which is collected from taxes. So this is two important views of fiscal policy from the Islamic perspective, where later on the second view now has been what we call it, widely accepted by many Muslim countries. Okay, so having said that, what we call it, this fiscal policy is allowed, in Islam. Okay, one is that, as I mentioned, because zakat is very limited. Second, one of the reasons is because Sharia allow us to have a market-based economy, right? Okay, so yes. Market-based economy is basically a Sharia market-based a market that has been followed by many Muslim countries. Okay, so therefore, government are expected therefore to regulate this market-based economy, because market is not perfect, right? Okay, so therefore, again, when government are expected to intervene in a market, regulate in the market. So this is where we find there is a relevance of fiscal policy in Muslim country. So therefore, we could argue that this is also another reason why fiscal policy is accepted, because of the market-based economy that need also government intervention or government regulation. And the third argument is basically why we require this fiscal policy, because sometimes we cannot control the movement of some macroeconomic variable in economy, such as like price. Sometimes we have a movement of pricing up and down. We have trade, for example, volatile. So in this case, we find that this control of price movement, provision of necessity, essential goods for the welfare of economics, it cannot be controlled by private sector. So again, we need government intervention. So if you allow the market based without government intervention, we have these ups and downs. So volatility in price movement or production. Sometimes we find that the goods is not produced. Sometimes it's overproduced. So all this volatility need government intervention. So again, this is another argument says that the government or fiscal policy is still acceptable and allowed in Islamic economics. Because it's not just we talk about welfare, but we are talking about the economic condition, as a whole, because when we talk about the whole economy, everybody will be affected, the whole society will be affected. So we need to also focus on this macroeconomic variable, and therefore we still need fiscal policy, or government intervention in this. Okay, three reasons why the fiscal policy play a very important role, in Islamic economics than the conventional one. In fact, we find that fiscal policy is very important in Islamic economy. Not only conventional, but in Islamic economy is much important. One is because the monetary policy that has been exercised so far, in conventional economies, they are with interest. So in Islamic economics, we know interest is prohibited. Okay, so we cannot use this monetary policy largely. We cannot use this monetary policy as long as using interest. So in this case, therefore, fiscal policy, therefore, is very important as an alternative, of monetary policy where the interest has been exercised. Because I think even Malaysia, we still have this interest exercise in some institution, financial institution. We cannot avoid that at the moment totally or 100%. So in this case, we need to say that as long as the monetary policy is not a very good option or policy, so I think fiscal policy is the best one that can be used in order to achieve the economic goals or macroeconomic goals. So that's why we say that fiscal policy is very important to Muslim country. Okay, one is because the limitation of the use of monetary policy because of the interest, and second is because the Muslim government, using zakat is still giving us a very minimum value of revenue, especially the revenue for the government, in order to proceed with more activity, not just to reduce poverty level, but also for the welfare of the whole society, such as like provision of the health services, education, all public goods or merit goods, all these require more revenue, where zakat sometimes cannot insufficient in order to provide this particular revenue or proceeds, for the activity, for further activity in the economy. And number three, why fiscal policy is very important to Muslim country is it relates to the source of the government spending itself. Okay, So the source of government spending in conventional economies is normally financed by public debt. As we know that when we say debt, it will be interest, involved with it. All loans have interest, especially when we are borrowing money from other country, we are borrowing money from international institution. So all this, however, interest is not allowed in Muslim country, and we against this practice of interest. So again, having this particular what we call it government spending source from the public debt is not a very good choice for the Muslim country. So in this case, therefore, we need to find other what we call it source of government spending. So how to get this source of government spending? Definitely from taxation. Taxation. So tax is the one that we use in order to finance this government spending instead of using debt. So that's the reason why most of the Muslim countries opt for this particular fiscal policy, due to this limitation of zakat, as well as the interest that has been involved when we are talking about the source of government spending through debt and also monetary policy implemented, using the interest-based interaction. So all these are the argument why we need this fiscal policy very much in Muslim country. Okay, so having said that, for this particular argument, let me look at the types of fiscal policy, outline what the types of fiscal policy that we have. Basically, I did highlight this before. There are two ways on how the government can implement fiscal policy. One is discretionary fiscal policy, and the other one is automatic, or we call it built-in stabilizer, automatic fiscal policy. Discretionary are basically where the government have deliberation, on what types of government or how much that government spending should be. In other words, should be spending on. How much is the taxation should be charged? So this is actually set by law. It's a deliberation by the government. All right. So, however, the economic or automatic stabilizer is more into automatic, what we call it, correction or automatic correction in the tax system itself. Okay, that try to correct the problems of macroeconomy. Okay, for example, if you have recession, basically the government budget, budget will be a deficit. Or in other words, we have higher government spending, less taxation. This is called automatic stabilizer or built-in stabilizer. And during inflationary period, we find the opposite. We find a budget surplus. All right, so therefore it will be more taxation, but then less government spending. Okay, I think all of you know how this automatic stabilizer works, and also how discretionary work. It's just that this is a two different way that how normally fiscal policy has been used by the policy maker, right? Having said this, expansionary fiscal policy, as we know, is the tools used in order to reduce unemployment or to combat recession. So it's including increased government spending, reduced taxation, or a combination of two. All right, and we expect that having this government spending boost or increase, reduce tax, will increase aggregate demand, because taxation will affect consumption. As we know that less taxation will increase consumption, and it also affect aggregate demand. Okay, so both tools, either G or T, will affect aggregate demand. It's just that the government spending directly affect aggregate demand, but taxation will give it impact on consumption first, then it will affect aggregate demand. So this is what we learn in theory, right? Okay, so if you look at the aggregate expenditure equation. So this is the focus variable that we are looking at. Yeah, and for contractionary fiscal policy, similarly, we are looking at the two tools. Okay, either is government spending or taxation. So the government spending is normally has been reduced during contractionary fiscal policy, especially when we have excessive inflation, right? Okay, but then the taxes will be increase in order to reduce the aggregate demand, where it will affect the consumption first and then the aggregate demand. So this is a very basic theory that we should know on how the tools of fiscal policy will affect aggregate demand. Yeah. Okay, so having said that, remember that the goals of fiscal policy, could be a list of the goals of fiscal policy, but again, I want to stress here that we have a bit different goals in Islamic economics in terms of fiscal policy, okay, because the concept of fiscal policy in Islamic economic system and conventional economic system are very different. So therefore, as I mentioned before, the conventional view, the welfare is only to attain the maximum worldly and material, what we call it, welfare. But then in Islam, we extended it to the hereafter. Yeah, so the welfare in Islam is extended in the hereafter. So as explained by Imam Al-Ghazali, the welfare here is not just the physical welfare. So it's also include safeguarding the people faith, the five, what we call it in Maqasid al-Sharia. I think most of you know what is Maqasid al-Sharia. So to safeguard the faith, the religion, the intellect, the lineage, and the property. So these are very important, what we call it, goals in Islamic economy. Yeah, not only to maximize the physical welfare or material welfare, but also these five things. Yeah, and Ibn al-Qayyim also stressed on this foundation of wisdom, as well as the welfare of the people in this world and also in the hereafter. All right, so therefore we can list, so I could list like this fiscal policy in Islamic framework goals can be listed as these. The first four are basically the one that we normally have in conventional economics. Economic growth, we try to achieve economic growth. We try to have full employment if possible. Even though we say that definitely we cannot have zero unemployment, but we try to reach the what we call it, the natural rates of unemployment. Okay, meaning to say that the people are able to work, able to earn income. Okay, we also have economic stability. So stability here is not just stability in terms of the what we call it, output produced, but stability in prices. Stability in if you are talking about the investment, stability in investment. So all this included in the objective of fiscal policy. Okay. Equitable distribution of income and wealth. This is also very important. Even in conventional economies, the stress on this objective of equitable distribution of income and wealth. Equitable doesn't mean equal, similar income, but it's a fair distribution of income and wealth. The rich is not become richer, the poor is not become poorer. So we try to close the gap between the two. And very importantly is number 5. We try to achieve in the Muslim country universal brotherhood and justice. So this is very important for Islamic economics. Okay, what is universal brotherhood and justice? Okay, so this is where we try to achieve the objective so that we can spread Islamic teachings as widely as possible. Okay, and therefore we can use the fiscal policy in order to devote our government expenditure to activity that increase the welfare of all Muslim fellows, yeah, in the less developed country especially. So this is very important objective for every Muslim country. Okay, we are not just trying to achieve all the four just now, but also we try to spread, yeah, our Islamic activity, increase the welfare of Muslims, not only in our country, but also in other less developed Muslim economies. So this is something additional to our fiscal goals, yeah, fiscal policy goals, which must be embedded, yeah, into Muslim country, not only all the four goals just now, but also this spreading of Muslim activity and welfare, taken care of all the Muslim Ummah. Yeah? So this is very important, and it is stated in many verses of Quran, yeah, that we should take care of our Muslim fellows, yeah, and also try to help our less developed Muslim economies. We try to achieve this by having contributing more activities, especially from the government expenditure or government spending. Okay, so having said this, therefore, I could say that there are three functions, yeah, of fiscal policy in Islamic framework. One is allocation. So in other words, it means that the fiscal policy is function, okay, in order to allocate, yeah, the resources so that it can be used to, it can be achieve the maximum use, yeah, okay, so that it will be distributed, or in other words, is allocated to the right person, to the right project, to the right program. So this is very important, because when we say allocation, so our the function of fiscal policy is to use the tax collection, the revenue, yeah, so that it will be allocated correctly, yeah, correctly, okay, in order to achieve the objective, the one that we listed just now, yeah. So in this case, the allocation function is very important, yeah, in order to make sure that everybody will have what we call it, will be treated equally or treated with the same manners, yeah, okay, especially among the Muslims, yeah, so that everybody will have all the chances in order to enjoy the welfare, yeah, that is actually allocated from the resources that we have in the economy, okay, as well as from the government budgets that allocated from the revenue that collected on the various projects and programs and other facilities provided by government. So in this case, basically the infrastructure provision, okay, all by the government are very important, yeah, as a tools or in order to boost the economic activity, in order to increase the standard of living of the society, especially Muslim society. Okay, and this is from this good resource allocation from the fiscal policy. So this is one of the function of fiscal policy, to allocate the resources. Yeah, but then we also have distribution function of fiscal policy. All right, because distribution function of fiscal policy govern how this the money is distributed within the allocation throughout the economy. Yeah, for example, we must allocate a certain program, okay, on which is much important compared to the others. So fiscal policy function, it must be distributed fairly, yeah, to the basic needs of the society. So the detail of this particular distribution must be there. Okay, and it must be very transparent by the government, so that it will be clear on who will get this particular allocation or revenue. Yeah, are they among the poor people, or is it among the middle income group people? Okay, on how this allocation has been made, okay, to the distribution, yeah, for all society or members of the society. So the function of fiscal policy is not just allocating the revenue, but also distribute this revenue, to the right people, okay, with the what we call it, the priority given to the poor, especially for the oppressed people and also for the unfortunate people. Okay, and another function of fiscal policy is, of course, as I mentioned before, is to stabilize of economic growth, to stabilize the employment in the economy, and also to stabilize the price. So in other words, it means that with this particular what we call it volatility, and sometimes we always have a shock in the economy. It's not only the shock inside the economy or local shock, but also sometimes international shock. So we find that economy might not be stable, if we have this particular interruption. So in order to stabilize economic growth, stabilize price, employment in the economy, so we need this, what we call fiscal policy, in order to make sure that there is no volatility or high volatility will happen in this particular economy. So again, fiscal policy in Islamic economy is very important, not only for distribution, allocation, but also stabilization. So that's the reason why we need this fiscal policy in Islamic economics. Is for the not only for the sake of the society individually, but also for the whole economy, in terms of stabilization. Okay, beside that, we also have a growth. Of course, growth is very important. We know that the function of fiscal policy definitely is to increase economic growth. Okay, but remember that in the conventional perspective, to have the economic growth, sometimes we have to borrow funds from other institutions, because we know that private sector sometimes cannot finance this particular money of which is used for the project's infrastructure. So in this case, remember that having this government intervention, through government spending will be it will need some funds to be borrowed by the government, and in order to finance this particular debt, in Islam, it's very important for us not to depend on interest rate, because interest rate is, of course, is prohibited. So we need this new, what we call it, source of this fund, borrowed. It could be through taxation, instead of debt borrowed by other institutions or other countries. So again, having zakat is not actually enough or sufficient in order to finance this particular economic, what we call government spending. So we need to replace this debt with taxation. This is the reason why fiscal policy play a very important role in order to finance this particular government spending through other sources, which is not using debt that involve interest. So this is very important for the function of fiscal policy in Islamic economics. Okay, now we go to the instrument of fiscal policy, basically the component that the government can use, or the tools that can be used by government in order to implement this fiscal policy. So as I mentioned before, the two tools that have been used are government spending and taxation, alongside with the zakat. But I will try to put zakat as another discussion, even though we can consider zakat as part of fiscal policy, but it's a bit different, from the two tools that we're going to discuss. So the first one, we will start with government spending or government expenditure. Probably this is just a recall back, your memory on what is government expenditure means. So it includes all public consumption, investment, as well as transfer payment. So the definition is quite important, because sometimes students confuse with this government component of government expenditure. In terms of the items under government expenditure. So most importantly, we know that when we say government spending is the spending of a government, which include government consumption, as well as government investment, and also transfer payment. To go detail, it's in other words, it means that it will be current expenditure. Sometimes we always refer to current expenditure as this government final consumption. Current expenditure here are like, for example, the payment to the public servants, the day-to-day running of the services, public services, So all these are the government final consumption, the government buying goods and services, So all this is basically spending, a current spending, we call it current expenditure of government. Okay, but there are also another component which is also part of a government spending, which is called capital spending, Because government, remember, government also make investment, They are also buying, for example, like building schools, building roads, hospitals. So all this acquisition of goods and services that intend to benefit the society in terms of infrastructure investment. So all this also considered as government expenditure. We call it capital expenditure. Or sometimes in some document, they call it fixed capital formation, Okay, both current and capital expenditure are constitute one of the component of GDP. But don't forget that government spending also include transfer payment. Okay, if the current expenditure is where you can see there are buying and selling of goods, right? Okay, there is a transfer of goods and also the transfer of money. But when we talk about transfer payment, this is just what we call it a transfer from money from one party to another party with no, what we call it, interaction. There is no two interaction, So this is just a transfer of what we call it payment to one party to another party, and this party involve government transfer to the individual person, or this individual person, it could be like pensioners, the what we call it, the students, as in terms of the scholarship received, it could be also to the people unemployed, for example, if the government giving unemployment benefit. So all this is still part of a government spending, a transfer payment, that where we find that the government still has to spend, they have to spend some money in order to contribute to this particular group of people, especially the unemployed people, the pensioners, to the student who want to study, in terms of the scholarship. So all security payments, social security payments, so all this in order to increase the welfare of the society, but there is no returns in terms of the services or goods, from the other side. So again, this is also part of our government spending. So government spending is conventionally have been financed by borrowing, as I mentioned before, or it could be also financed by printing more money. So this is also another way that how the government can finance this government spending, either by borrow, where we find that by borrowing it might involve interest, which is against by Islamic economics view, or against by Sharia. Printing money is another way how the government can finance this government spending, or it could be by taxes, by collect taxes or impose taxes, on a specific group of people. So basically, when we have to spend, when the government has to spend, this money has to be financed by few sources. And these are the three sources conventionally the conventional economies are normally used. All right. Okay, I think most of you know that there are pros and cons of this. For example, like debt, yeah, printing of money, because printing of money sometimes it could create inflation, yeah. Okay, and also taxation. So all these are the major component or major sources of financing our government spending, yeah, through the fiscal, where we have fiscal policy. Right. So when we talk about taxation. Okay, taxation is another component of fiscal policy beside government spending. And taxation in general is a levy imposed by government to fund public expenditure. Okay, and this public expenditure definitely is used in order to pay for the cost, administration costs, the provision of public services, yeah, all this. Okay, and taxation basically is the source on how we can finance our government spending. Yeah, so tax has a very huge impact on the economy. Okay, and then why it's having impact on economy is because it will giving impact to the how much the money that government has to spend. And they are also specifically give impact to how much money the individual will have to spend, because tax, there are a wide type of taxes. Yeah, there are tax on income. There are also tax on consumption, on goods and services. So when we talk about taxes, there are also a variety of taxes can be imposed by government. Okay, so the reason why taxation is very important is that sometimes we need this taxation not only to finance government spending, but also for other reasons. Okay, one reason is because sometimes we need to reduce consumption which is harmful to the society. So this is also another reason why tax is imposed, especially when we talk about the consumption of alcohol, the consumption of cigarette, for example, which is, we know is very harmful to the society, and we need to have this taxation in order to reduce the consumption. So tax is not only to finance government spending, but also to discourage, yeah, consumption of certain commodity which is considered detrimental to the society. So this is also a function of taxes, yeah. And taxes also could be considered as a tools in order to redistribute labor forces. Okay, for example, if we want to encourage worker to be employed to one industry to another industry, so probably we could impose taxation in order to decrease, yeah, to in other words, to make them transfer from one particular industry to another industry by imposing, for example, taxes on income. Yeah. So having said that, this is a one way on how we can redistribute our labor forces. Okay, so that it will be mobile from one industry to another industry. Sometimes we need this redistribution of labor forces, so that we can balance, yeah, our labor activity, yeah, so that it can increase the labor participation in one industry and reduce the labor participation in another industry. So this is also another reason why we need taxes, yeah, in order to redistribute labor forces, especially in the labor market. Okay, comparing one industry with another industry. And very importantly, tax is very important to redistribute income. We know that this is a very important role of tax, to make sure that we have redistribution of income among the society. Okay, what does it mean? It means that we try to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Okay, we don't want to have the rich become richer, the poor become poorer. So that's the reason why we tax. Okay, we tax income we are imposing higher tax on higher income people, okay, but we are not impose any tax to the, let's say, below certain level of income. We only impose certain amount of tax or small amount of tax at the middle income level. So this is the reason why we need these particular taxes, is in order to close the gap, yeah, between the rich and the poor. And these tools is very important also in Muslim countries. Yeah? It's very important to make sure that, okay, we don't have people who are disadvantaged or unfortunate, especially the poor, okay, and also to avoid poverty among the people in the society. Okay, even in Islam also we find that the taxes also very important, so that we can reduce the consumption of goods which is considered as haram or not allowed in Islam. For example, like alcohol, cigarettes, drugs. So all this is considered detrimental, even in by by Sharia. So in this case, we also try to use taxation in order to reduce these commodities consumed by the society. So basically, these are the reason why we need taxes, yeah, in our fiscal policy. Okay, so having discussion on these taxes, of course, there are few types. Yeah, most important or major types of taxes is either is a direct taxes or indirect taxes. Yeah. So direct taxes normally refer to taxes that impose on income and wealth. Yeah? So it's normally like income taxes of individuals, or it could be taxes on corporate business, tax on property, yeah? Stamp duty, tax on capital gains. Yeah? So these are taxes directly imposed on income or wealth, yeah, of the individuals. But then we have the other types of taxes called indirect, which are imposed on spending, expenditure. All right. So normally it could be like depending on the goods. Yeah. Sometimes the government impose taxes on the quantity of the product, the quantity of the goods produced, or it could be also the tax imposed on the price of the goods produced. Yeah. So normally it will affect on consumer. Yeah. When we say about indirect taxes, normally it will charge, or it will be giving impact widely to the consumer, because the consumer will actually the final end user, yeah, of the product. Okay, even though the indirect taxes is actually in the very beginning imposed on the producer, but the producer will transfer it to the consumer. This is where we find that there is a transfer of taxes, yeah, from a producer to the consumer, where we learn about tax incident. I think all of you know about tax incident, where sometimes the tax transfer 100%, sometimes the tax transfer partially, or it could be sometimes the tax is not transferred at all. Yeah. So all this is where we talk about tax incident, where the tax is which is imposed on the producer is transferred to the consumer. So these are the types of taxes that we have, where we talk about imposition of tax as fiscal policy. But the question now is that, is tax permissible in Islam? Yeah. So this is a very big issue that we want to talk here, where we know that government spending definitely is very important. Yeah. Okay, but how about taxes? Because we know that in the history during prophets, normally the tax is not being charged except zakat, yeah, which is imposed on Muslim. Okay. But then later on, we find that there are agreement among the scholars that the tax is permissible in Islam. Yeah. So according to Kaf, they found that neither prophets or the Sahabat levy any other tax apart from zakat. Yeah. Salim also pointed out 3 instances on why the government cannot levy any tax other than zakat. So these are the arguments from one side of the scholar. Okay, these 3, what we call it, evidence is from the Sunnah, where I just read few of this. There is no legal share for the society, the wealth of people, except zakat. After you have paid the zakat of your wealth, you have paid what is legally required of you. No tax imposer shall enter paradise. So this is another hadith, saying that there is no such thing as taxes, but the only imposition of government on the Muslim is only zakat. Okay, but then later on, however, most Muslim scholars agreed that taxes may be imposed in the Islamic economy as when we need it for the welfare of the society. So in other words, it means that taxes is not considered as a compulsory as zakat, but sometimes taxes is very important in order to finance our, what we call it, government spending, in order to increase welfare of the Muslim society. And if zakat cannot afford or insufficient to be used to achieve this, we can impose taxes, in other words. So in other words, taxes is justified in Islam. Okay, so of course zakat is compulsory charge, and definitely is allowed. It can be used in order to finance government spending. Okay, but most importantly is that zakat is actually considered is inadequate because zakat is distributed to a specific people, especially to the poor. And we in fact we have a list of those, the recipient of zakat, that has to be receive this particular zakat payment. Okay, in fact, if we don't have enough sufficient fund in order to go for other goals that is actually for the society's sake or for the welfare of the society, we can impose taxes. So this is what most Muslim scholars agreed on. So taxes, it can be used in order to increase the welfare to the society when it's needed. When it's needed. Okay. So in other words, we say that tax collection is permitted. And one justification for this is that zakat revenue can only be given to specific group of people, as I mentioned just now. Okay, what are those group of people? I think most of us know. Who are those recipient of zakat? It's allowed in Islam. Not everybody can receive this zakat. Only a specific people of specific people or recipient. So we find that because of this, tax is considered as permitted. Is permitted by Muslim scholar. Okay, because zakat is only specified to a specific group of people. And second justification is that we know that nowadays Islamic states are expanding their activity. We know that there is new technology. We need more actually. We need more finance in order to increase our standard of living. Because otherwise we'll be backwards compared to other countries, especially the non-Muslim countries. So in this case, the argument is that in order to expand this activity, we still need this taxation imposed in order to keep it, in order to keep our welfare increased or standard of living increased, so that we'll be in par with other non-Muslim countries, especially in order to widen our Islamic teaching, especially for da'wah, in order to expand our activity, Islamic activity, to not only in Muslim country, but also to spread our Islamic, what we call it, da'wah to other non-Muslim countries. So this is very important also, as a source activity, we need these funds from taxation. Okay, besides that, many jurists see this authority that enable the imposition of taxes alongside zakat, in order to meet these particular welfare activities, not just to expand their activity, but also other welfare activities, and also to able to supplement. Taxes can supplement zakat revenue. Okay, so taxes therefore is still not violating the Islamic Sharia, as long as we use this fund in order to increase our Islamic activity, and this is also very important, because to have expanding our Islamic activity, we need funds, from many sources, and taxes is one of it. So the argument that taxes is allowable in Islam is actually has been supported here in order to supplement or to complement zakat revenues that might be not sufficient for the activity that we have in a Muslim country. So this is one also another argument that tried to be brought by the Muslim scholars in order to support this particular taxation. Okay, having said the government expenditure as one of the tools of fiscal policy, now we go to the government expenditure as a tool, as a component of fiscal policy. The classification of government expenditure, in terms of the classification, in Islamic economy, the role of state is of course is different, in the conventional economies. Okay, and what we could see that the government expenditure that must be exercised by the Muslim country must realize the maqasid al-Sharia. As I mentioned before, okay, any spending by government must realize this maqasid al-Sharia. Okay, what is this maqasid al-Sharia? To protect the maslahah, the public maslahah. All the 5 elements are very important: the religion, the life, the reason, the marriage, the property. So all this must be protected when the government are spending. So in other words, it means that the government cannot easily spend the money on unnecessary spending or unnecessary things, but it must realize this objective of Sharia, right? Okay, historically, this government spending in Islamic economy is financed by zakat, and another source of funds for the government spending is also from ghanimah. So ghanimah is basically the wealth which is obtained after the Muslims win the war. So normally, historically, the government spending in Islamic economy will be based on this fund from zakat and ghanimah. Okay, but then when we say that zakat and ghanimah, as we know that these two are very limited. Okay, why? Because zakat has their own what we call it recipient, and ghanimah nowadays is not exercised anymore. Because normally we don't have country having a war, taken over another country, and then they obtain wealth. So ghanimah is hardly being used nowadays. So because of this two, what we call it, source of government spending or finance of government spending has not been used. So this is the reason why we need also taxation in order to finance the government spending. Okay, the government spending, as I mentioned, must be spent in such a way that it's only for welfare orientated. Okay, as maqasid al-Sharia outline, and also must be also achieve the goals of Islamic State in order to establish justice, security, tranquility. So all this must be the objective of the government spending. So when we talk about government spending, the government must really look at the purpose of spending. Yeah, are they following or are they in line with the Maqasid Sharia to achieve these goals or not? Yeah, so this is very important. All right. So having said this, there are three main categories of government spending that it should be in the Islamic economy. And number one is the permanent types. Okay, the permanent government spending. Example of the permanent government spending, which assigned by Sharia, could be like defense. Yeah, defense is very important nowadays. Also, law and order, justice, public administration. Okay, so this is basically permanent. Government has to spend every year on this. Yeah. Okay, basic needs fulfillment. Yeah. This is also permanent. Da'wah activities. Okay. When we say basic need fulfillment, this is including housing, education. Yeah. Okay, clothing. Okay, so this must be considered as important. Yeah. Okay, by the Islamic economics or the Islamic government. Okay, because basic need fulfillment must be there, at least a minimum to the society. Yeah, so it should be permanent spending on this da'wah activities. Okay, commanding right conduct and forbidding the wrong. So this is also very important, and fulfillment of fardu kifayah or social obligation. Okay, when there is no private sector will do it. Yeah. So this is including all this like helping the poor. Yeah. So this is a fardu kifayah. So we need social obligation. All this must be maintained as a part of the government spending. Yeah. So the government spending must be all on these permanent activities. Yeah. But there are also spending which is addition to this. Yeah, we call it a necessary spending. Okay, depending on the circumstances. So this is depending on circumstances. Okay, in other words, this is not compulsory. It might not permanent. It could be happen. It could be spent on it, or sometimes it might not be spent on it. So it depends on the situation. Okay, number one is environmental protection. Okay, if you really have a environmental problem, so of course you need spending on this. You have to spend on cleaning environment. But if you don't have the problem, definitely you don't need to spend on this. Yeah. Or it could be also public goods. Yeah, because there are public goods which is considered very important. There are also considered as merit goods. Merit goods are a combination, yeah, goods that can be provided by public, government, and also private sectors. So these are something on top of the permanent one. Yeah, even scientific research. Yeah, even though we know scientific research is very important nowadays in new technological development. Yeah, but then some country or some, if they find that it's very important, they might go for it. But if it's not important, okay, it might not. In other words, we don't want capital formation and economic development. Yeah, subsidies for priority research, expenditure, and stabilization policy. So this is a necessary, but it's not considered as very important, yeah, in order for us to finance, yeah, our government activities on this. All right. And there are also expenditure on activity assigned by people. Okay, this is it could be open-ended category where the individual have a freedom to organize activity that can promote individual interest, group interest, social interest. Okay, but this is, in other words, this is not for the whole society, but for specific group. Yeah. So the government can also spend on activity that increase, yeah, to promote a certain group of interest. But this is considered as not really important, yeah, except the first one, which is the permanent one, and it could be also the second one depending on the circumstances. Okay, so this is how we categorize the government expenditure, so that we will go for the important one. Yeah, the priority is very important, the important one. Okay, and then if you got more fund, you can go to the second one. Yeah, and then if you have more fund, you can go for the third one. So this is how Islam actually looking at priority in order to look at how we spend. So when we talk about spending, the government spending need to be very carefully spending, yeah, because we do not want to have a wasting of the money on unnecessary spending by government. Okay, and what are the guiding principles? So this is where we came up with the guiding principle of government spending. Okay, the government spending or expenditure must be guided with these very important principles in Islam. Okay, number one, moderation in budgeting. Yeah, this is very important. Okay, we don't want to have excessive spending. Okay, where later on we might have budget deficit, yeah, which is large percentage of budget deficit. All right, so in other words, it means that okay, we must have a balance, yeah, between revenue and expenditure. If possible, we don't want to have too much spending compared to the taxes or the revenue. And in the modern states, we know that there is a tendency that we try to spend beyond the means. Yeah? We try to avoid this if possible. So moderation in budgeting is very important. Okay, when we talk about government spending in Muslim country, yeah, is guided by Islamic principle. So the moderation in budgeting is one. Okay, and this is also another explanation on this. Islamic economic system spending is made according to the revenue available. Yeah. Okay, so we try to avoid this loan or the debt, okay, or printing money which is not necessary to finance our deficit. Okay, we also try to avoid this risk. Yeah, when we are talking about debt, you borrowing money, heavy debt is a risk that you have to take. Or when you are printing more money, it causes inflation. This is again another risk. Yeah. Okay. So it might cause risky inclination, yeah, from the budget which is not moderate. So we try to avoid this large budget deficit, yeah, in as a guiding principle in Islam. Okay, heavy debt is, if possible, we try to avoid, yeah. Printing more money to finance this particular government spending also. We try to control so that it will not cause inflation. Yeah. So all this has to be moderation. Yeah. Okay. So moderation is in Islam is very important, as I stated down here. There are two verses here talking about this. Yeah. And let not they can be chained to thy neck, no open it. The complete opening leads to sit down rebuke. And those who, when they spend, and neither prodigal, okay, and there is ever firm station between the two. So in other words, means that in this Quran verses, where we are talking about public expenditure, okay, it's very important for us to prepare our public expenditure according to the moderation of spending, yeah, rather than excessive spending. So this is why we need a moderation in Islam. Yeah? Moderation is very important when we talk about spending. We don't want to waste our revenue on those particular spending which is on unnecessary things. Yeah. Okay, number two, beside moderation, priorities in spending. Yeah. So as I mentioned, maslahah is very important. Maqasid syariah, secure the interest of public in all aspects. Okay, this must be followed by the authority. All right. whatever spending, it must be to the interest of these 5 things, yeah, the life, yeah, the lineage, the religion, yeah. So all 5 items in the public maslahah must be secured. So this is the most important part, yeah, that we must follow as a Muslim country. Okay, according to Imam Shatibi, okay, public interest, yeah, when we talk about maslahah, it can be categorized into 3. Yeah, I think all of you are probably well known about this. Okay, we have daruriyah, necessities, hajiyah, complementary, and tasiniyat, yeah, which is refinement. Okay, so these 3 category is in ascending order. So first we must focus on necessities. So this must be the priority. So the priority must be to provide the goods and services, yeah, which is important, necessary, essential. Okay, and then we are going for the second one to complement, yeah. Then if you have extra, we go for the refinement, tasinian. So these are very important priority orders for the government in order to seek to promote social welfare, especially when they are using their spending. Yeah. All right. So definitely, if you are talking about luxury, of course, people like to have luxuries. Okay, but then in government spending, luxuries are strongly rejected. Yeah. So we don't want to have this wasteful, self-indulgent, yeah, product produce or spending. So the most important one is daruriyat, the basic necessity of life. That's why it must be there as a very important spending by the government, especially the provision of basic necessities such as like what we call it, education, shelter, yeah, houses, okay, basic facilities, utilities like water supply, electricity. So all this must be considered as the first priority in a government spending. Okay, definitely this is must be the first one. Then we go to the hajat, the goods and services that is convenient to make people live better. Okay, of course, it's not definitely it must be the goods and services which is not harmful. Okay, but these are the facilities, goods and services that can remove difficulties, yeah, of the society. Right. So this is also important sometimes. Okay, but provided that we have more revenue, yeah, in order to spend on it. Okay, which is not considered as the first priority, but it could be good if we have that. Yeah. So it will be much easier, it will be better if we can have this particular goods and services provided, as long as we have a fund for it, we have extra fund for it. And for the tasiniat, for the enrichment and the provision of comfortness, yeah, okay, we allow this for better utilization, improvement, yeah. Okay, but then this is not the first priority. Yeah, this is not the first priority. So we always focus on the necessity, daruriyat, and then we go to the hajiyat. We have extra, and then if we get more extra, we can go for the refinement. So these are the order that we must follow when the government try to spend on their revenue, yeah, on this particular goods and services. Okay, what are the principles of public revenue spending? Okay, in Ottoman civilization before, yeah, we find that all public expenditure, they have their own principles of public expenditure. The public expenditure must aim to meet the welfare of the society or the people. And the second is to provide comfortness, yeah, or to remove the hardship and injuries, yeah. So this is has been practiced in Ottoman civilization before. Okay, and the majority's interest should always be a priority, okay, over the minority. So in other words, another principle that has been also exercised is that we always go for the majority interest, not for the minority interest. Okay, and sometimes we might have to sacrifice. Yeah? We might have a small sacrifice in order to save the need of the people at large, and the cost must be borne by those who receive the benefits. Yeah. So for those who receive the benefit, the cost of it also must be borne by those who receive the benefit. So these are something addition to the principle that we have in Islamic economy on how we spend our government revenue, okay, which has been practiced during the Ottoman civilization, which probably we can also adding up, especially where we talk about the majority interest is much important than the minority. Okay, and we should sacrifice. Sometimes we have to sacrifice in order to save for the need for the people at large. So in other words, there will be a trade-off sometimes. Okay, or when we talk about the choices that we make. So in this case, the need of the people at large is very important. Okay, so what are the examples that the public spending must be used for? Yeah, this is just some outline that we could probably look at on how the government can spend on. Okay, of course, the basic needs are like education, healthcare, security, public goods, affordable houses, amenities, utilities, okay. Utilize public money to improve living standard, this is to maintain the real value of income. Okay, preventing, control public expenditure with intention to prevent inflation or recession. This is the goals of stabilization. Okay, so these are examples of how the government should spend the money on. Yeah, of course, the basic necessities is very important. Anything that improves standard of living is also considered as important. Okay, as long as the government get fund for it, and definitely to reduce instability, in the economy. For example, when we talk about inflation, we don't want to have too high inflation. We don't want to have ups and downs of the business cycle that cause recession. So all this must be very good things that the government should control by using their public expenditure. Okay, poverty alleviation, this is also important. Yeah, of course, a government should try to avoid or to reduce these poverty rates. Yeah, okay. Aside of it, okay, we try to also make sure that the children are being protected. Yeah, allowance for the adults who fulfill a certain condition. Okay, and on top of that, okay, there are also benefits to the public servants, those who are serving for the government. So this is something that probably we can take into consideration on how the government should spend, right? So this is just an example on how the government should outline their spending in such a way that we can achieve all the welfare of the society. All right. Okay, taxation and public revenue in Islam. Okay, there are 5 traditional sources of public revenue. So when we talk about taxation are basically the source, how we can collect revenue, government revenue in Islam. Okay, previously during Prophet's time, okay, there are a few sources of public revenue, or we can call it source of government spending. One is from zakat, one is from there are also from ghanima. So ghanima is basically divided into few things like homes, this is actually a component of from ghanima. There are also from sadaqah, and there are also from borrowing. And during the Khalif period, Haraj, Jizya is also introduced. So I will let you know what does it mean by this. Because these are the taxes on what we call it non-Muslim, non-Muslims. There are also taxes on the trading, So these are the sources of public revenue, which some have been practiced, but there are some which not has been practiced anymore. Yeah. So throughout the historical development, some of this public revenue were abolished, and it's limited to some only, right? Only we find that there are few public revenue has been maintained, especially zakat, sadaqah, yeah, and also borrowing. Okay, the modern sources of government revenues in Islamic economy can be classified into few. Nowadays, if you look at the sources of government revenue in most Muslim country, definitely they are from zakat, yeah, sadaqah, taxes. Now they also introduce taxes, income from minerals, yeah, if they got minerals, oil, yeah, for example, seigniorage. What seigniorage means? It means that when there's the difference between value of coins or the money, yeah, and the face value and the cost of producing the money or the coin, and also sometimes charges and fees, yeah. So all these are the sources of government revenue in Muslim countries nowadays, yeah. So most of the time we find that it will depend on the country. Some country they have rich of minerals, they can get sources from income of minerals, yeah. Some are using taxes, okay, sadaqah and others. Okay, for whom? Yes.
Prof, sorry,
Yes.
Professor, the presentation time is only 20 minutes away.
Oh, okay, 20 minutes. Oh,
Yes.
all right. Okay, I will just go through very fast, yeah, on others. Okay, so this is just example of previous, yeah, sources of revenue from homes. As I mentioned, it's basically part of ghanimah. It's a 20% of ghanimah. There are also from what we call it jizya, haraj, yeah. So fee is actually a wealth from the land acquired by Muslim, okay, when they are from the enemy, especially, but when there is no fighting is taken place, no war is taken place. All right, there are also a tax imposed outside the peninsula of Arab Peninsula last time, yeah, we call it haraj, tax on agriculture and land located outside, yeah, Arab Peninsula. This has been practiced before, but then later on it's stopped. Okay, it's practiced by Khalif Omar. Jizya is another tax imposed to non-Muslim living in Muslim country. Previously, we call it poll tax. Okay, but then again now it's abolished. So there are many types of sources of public revenue has been abolished in Islam, and that's why we need to have these new taxes, the tax introduced in order to finance our government spending. So Ush is also another type of tax imposed on trading, yeah, commercial business tax on the trader with other country. So again, this is also this is just like export-import tax that we practice nowadays. Yeah. Okay, sadaqah, we know that this is basically a contribution made by individual or organization in order to finance our public revenue, right? And borrowing, as I mentioned, is also another way how to finance public revenue. Okay, but then most importantly, nowadays the debt is always involved with interest. So this is also not another what we call it recommended source of public revenue that we have to exercise in Muslim country. Yeah? And minerals, income from minerals for those who have large minerals or large share of minerals. Seigniorage, as I mentioned just now, is the difference between face value of coin and the cost of producing the coin. Yeah? So normally this is when we talk about money, yeah, using of money in order to get additional value from in order to finance our government spending or service fees and charged by government. Okay, so I will just go straight on taxation and Islamic guiding principle of taxation. Why? What are the principles in order to impose a taxation? Yeah. Okay. To have taxation imposed by government, we need to look at what are the conditions to impose a tax. Okay, the government is not free to impose any type of tax. So in this case, we find that even though we are allowed to impose taxes, okay, that there must be a condition to impose a tax. Okay, what are those conditions? Regular revenues, the tax is imposed if the regular revenue have been depleted. So in other words, it means that we are allowed to impose tax if the revenue that we have from other sources are depleted. All right. So meaning to say that tax is only imposed if necessary. Yeah. And also another condition is that it's where the defense expenses have exceed the current resources. Yeah. So this is also another condition. Tax are only levied temporarily, and the imposition of taxes should not exceed the needs, and taxes are only levied on the rich only. So these are very important guidelines that we have to follow as a government in order to impose any taxation, right? So therefore, it will, in other words, it's secure our maqasid al-Shariah. Yeah. So we cannot just simply impose taxes to collect more revenue without this particular guideline and condition. So this is the guideline in order to have to impose taxes. This is just a quotation by Ibn Hazm and another scholar, on this particular, what we call it, condition to impose taxation. I will just skip this. Other condition that must be taken into account is that to insecure amount of money to cover the country expenses, taxes. We know that Baitul Mal is normally a source of public spending, right? Okay, so if the Baitul Mal cannot sufficient in order to provide this particular amount of money, then we can impose taxation. Okay. And then when we impose taxation also, it's very important that the tax burden is also distributed equally and there is no discrimination. So this is also another important condition that we must take into account so that it will be fair for the those who are being imposed with the tax and those who are receiving the tax. All right. Okay, so the spend on the people maslahah, it must be for the interest, must be the priority, not for the indulgence, yeah. And then the charge, the assessment, the collection of taxes must be based on equity, justice, fairness. So this is very important. Okay, as Islamic rulers, we must abide with this principle of equity, justice, and fairness. And whatever laws, tax law, regulation must be consistent with the Islamic provision or injunction. Okay, who are the taxpayer? Okay, definitely in Islam, we only impose taxes on the rich and those who can afford. So this is very important, yeah. Those rich and those who can afford. So meaning to say that we are not impose taxes on those who cannot afford to pay taxes. Taxes must be imposed on profit and capital gain. Yeah, this is for businesses especially. Yeah, it must be imposed on profit and capital gain if some of the exploitation of the political position, extraordinary economic condition to take place. Custom duty may be imposed on non-Muslim traders. All right, but with the agreement. Yeah, we must have the agreement with them. Treaties or agreement governing the entry of foreign merchandise. We can impose taxes on non-Muslim traders, but there must be mutual ground and agreement. Okay, and what are the tax principle or procedure? Okay, it must be fair and easy. Okay, I think this is also the procedure or the principle in conventional taxes. Yeah, it must be fair and easy. the burden of taxes must be distributed evenly, yeah, among those who are qualified to pay taxes. Okay. Some Muslim jurists hold the opinion that it is permissible to impose unjust levy if such action does not result in weaker injustice. So this is the trade-off. Sometimes we are allowed to impose some taxes that giving less injustice compared to bigger injustice. So this is where sometimes we have a choice in a situation where we might have what we call it an option, okay, of justice, small injustice and large injustice. We go to the small injustice. Okay, view zakat as measure this is for zakat, yeah, as a fiscal measure. As I mentioned before, zakat is a bit different from tax and government spending, especially taxes, yeah, because zakat it is considered as a fiscal tools which not treated as a same manner as taxation because it's a religious tax, yeah. Okay, it's actually based on divine, based on Quran and Sunnah. Okay, whereas fiscal or tax is a man-made. So zakat is from Allah, from the revelation, but fiscal tools like tax is from man. Yeah, this is made by human being. And second is that zakat is basically fixed in terms of the rate, whereas when you talk about taxes, there are progressive taxes. Progressive taxes means that you charge higher tax when the income is higher, you charge lower tax when income is lower. So they are not fixed, yeah, they are not fixed, and it can be manipulated, in other words. But then zakat is sub, and the rates are very, very fixed, and they cannot be manipulated. Right? The intention for the proceed of zakat is also very clear. That zakat is for whom, yeah. Okay, but then for taxes is different. And in fact, the Muslim government cannot manipulate zakat revenue with the same with the tax revenue. So it means that, but zakat still have a strong major impact on economy, because zakat giving impact on consumption. Okay, because if you are receiving zakat, your consumption will increase. But if you are paying zakat, your consumption will reduce. Yeah, so they are also giving impact on saving. They are also giving impact on investment. So basically, we could say that zakat still can be influenced the economic activity or expansionary effect on economy, just like tax here. Okay, because it won't affect our aggregate demand, right? Okay, as I mentioned just now, zakat and progressive tax is totally different, yeah. Different types of imposition. Even though zakat is a fixed rate, but progressive tax is where the tax is imposed in such a way that it will be bigger. Taxes has to be paid by the rich, but then less to the poor, yeah, or lower income group people. So again, zakat cannot be manipulated. It has been fixed, but progressive tax can be changed, yeah, can be changed. Okay, so as a fiscal measure, zakat can still consider as fiscal tools, yeah, because they are actually one of the tools which can allocate the income among the society. Okay, and then we find that also the high income group are discouraged when zakat is imposed. So we find that the high income group are not really being discouraged to invest more, because they're only being paid a very small part of percentage of their wealth in terms of zakat. So we could see that zakat is, as compared to taxation, sometimes is much better, because of their moderation and their fixed term that will not actually burden higher income group people, because they are being taxed with a certain amount, fixed amount. And this will still encourage investment in the economy. And we also can use it, this zakat as tools to redistribute income among the society. And somehow we find that it's more superior compared to taxation, especially progressive taxation, because zakat is wider based rather than progressive tax. Because zakat is for everybody. Everybody has to pay zakat, but not progressive tax. Tax is only for certain group of people. Yeah. So we find that in fact it's better. Yeah, it's superior than the progressive tax because zakat is wide. As long as you got, for example, wealth, you have to pay zakat. Okay, and in fact, zakat fitrah, everybody has to pay. Yeah. So all this has to, everybody are obliged for this particular zakat. Second, zakat can be channeled directly to the poor and the needy, and then basically it's directly to the poor and needy. Meaning to say that there is no what we call it in between. Okay, there is no such as like mediator that what we call it where the money is transferred from one party to another party and then later on to the poor. So this directly go to the poor with the institution of zakat is distributing it, yeah, and definitely it will increase the propensity to consume because we know that the poor are the one that have high propensity to consume. So when the high propensity to consume, it will increase more aggregate demand if they can spend more. Yeah? They can spend more from this particular zakat. So it will be also stimulating. Yeah, it can increase investment also because since zakat is fixed. Yeah, for the higher income group people, for the business people, basically the nisab like 2.5% is actually not very much as compared to the income tax that they have to pay or profit tax they have to pay. So we find that even zakat is still stimulating investment in the economy and not discouraging investment. Yeah, so this is also another argument that why we find that zakat is still superior than progressive tax. Yeah. Okay, so definitely zakat, if it's being collected also, it will give a constant income to the government because, as I mentioned, this is very wide. Okay, everybody has to pay every year, yeah, religious tax, yeah. So it will be a constant income to the government. It cannot be changed by authority. The rates is fixed. The recipient also fixed, yeah, based on the Quran. So these are why we find that zakat is much more powerful compared to taxation. All right, so I will just go very fast on this. I think all of us know what is the function of zakat, yeah, especially in terms of allocation of resources, allocative efficiency, economics. This is very important, yeah, allocative efficiency, this redistribution of income, the transfer of income from the poor, from the rich to the poor. Zakat and stabilization. Of course, zakat it could be also involuntarily can be used in order to reduce instability, especially when during recession, it will allow people to spend more money. Yeah. Okay, so when we have a peak period, more zakat has been collected, you have to pay more zakat. So it will be actually the tools of stabilization. And definitely zakat can increase economic growth, as I mentioned. Why economic growth is linked with zakat? Because from zakat, it will boost the expenditure or spending by the poor, because the poor are the one that have higher marginal propensity to consume compared to the rich. And then having this zakat imposed, it will increase consumption, especially for the poor people, and this will increase aggregate demand in the economy. Okay, it's not just good to the poor, but it's also for the whole economy. Yeah, it will boost aggregate demand and the economic growth. All right, so increase investment and also increase production. Okay, I think that's all for my presentation. So basically, I will cover two components just now, which is very important component of fiscal policy. Government spending and also taxation, and with the guiding principle in Islam, and also the argument on zakat that is much more powerful compared to the progressive taxes. For that, thank you very much. I will welcome any question from the floor. Thank you very much.
Yes, oke. Karena keterbatasan waktu, finally, we thanks Prof. Dr. Jarita Duasa for such an interesting explanation for the sharing with us. Okay, for the next step of this presentation, for all participants, if you have any question or to our speaker today, now the time for Q&A section. Please, jadi sekarang tahap yang kedua, tadi setelah pemaparan dari Profesor Dr. Jarita Duasa, bagi peserta atau yang hadir pada Zoom meeting kali ini, bagi yang ingin memberikan pertanyaan secara langsung, bisa langsung disampaikan dalam forum ini atau mungkin melalui chat Zoom, ya, chat Zoom yang ada pada bagian Zoom di bagian bawah, ya. Silakan bagi para penanya yang ingin bertanya bisa memberikan pertanyaan secara langsung. Kesempatan saya berikan waktunya kurang lebih 30 menit ya dari sekarang. Oke. Ya. Oke. Oke, there is one question, Prof. Jarita, in the chat Zoom. Yes. Yeah. From Cici Trimulyani. From Cici Trimulyani, I want to ask a question. If zakat can affect the economic growth of the country, well, in country there are not only Muslim, then in the truly Muslim will get two obligation to pay zakat and tax. Yeah, how the distribution of zakat is possible between zakat and tax? Does not burden cities, but still helps that revenue. Thank you in advance, Miss. Okay. It is the one question, Prof. Jarita.
Yeah. Okay. Should I answer this first? Okay. I answer this first, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then, the question now is that what happened if we have economic growth, the country where we have Muslim and non-Muslim, right?
Yes.
Muslim and non-Muslim, and then we found that we have to pay zakat. Okay, Muslim has to pay zakat, and then for the non-Muslim they have to pay taxes, right?
Taxes,
okay,
yes.
Muslim will get two obligations to pay zakat and taxes. Actually, when we talk about these two obligations, in most of the Muslim country, zakat, if you are paying taxes, okay, you are being exempted from. If you pay zakat, you are being exempted to pay taxes. So you are not actually pay both. Actually, yeah. Okay, you are being exempted. Meaning to say that if you already pay zakat, you are not necessary to pay taxes. So in this case, in other words, you are not burdened twice. Okay, you are not burdened twice. So therefore, this is very fair. It's very fair for Muslim and non-Muslim. For the non-Muslim, they can pay taxes. For the Muslim, if they already pay zakat, they are not obliged to pay taxes anymore. Oh. Yeah, so that is normally exercised in Muslim country. So therefore, the resources are received by the government, and the revenue can be used for both citizens, Muslim and non-Muslim. It will still helping the society, both Muslim and non-Muslim. Okay, so this has been practiced in Malaysia, but I think it's also practiced in Indonesia, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're being exempted. Most of the people who are paying zakat, they are being exempted to pay taxes. So we need to say you are not obliged to pay taxes, especially income tax, especially the income tax. Okay, the only tax that you have to pay definitely the only zakat that you have to pay is just like zakat fitrah. This is a common one, which is very important. But when we are looking at income zakat on wealth, so zakat income is actually being exempted from the income tax. Normally has to be paid by most of the citizens. I hope it's answering the question.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Jarita. And the second question from Mr. Rafli. Mr. Rafli, I want to ask, what if the country use charity in their fiscal policy? Charity and the same name charity is sodakoh, yes, Prof. Dalam hal lembaga amal yang langsung dikelola negara, And what's the difference of charity and zakat in the system, or it's the same thing? Thank you.
All right. I think okay, thank you for the question. Okay, definitely if you know about this, what we call it zakat is compulsory, Zakat is a compulsory. So everybody has to pay zakat when you are reach certain nisab of your wealth, of your income, But charity is not compulsory. It's a sadaqah. It's not compulsory. So this is a difference between the two. So when we say that fiscal policy, zakat is one of the tools that we can use for fiscal policy. But as I mentioned, it's a very limited. So that's why we need sadaqah. We need sadaqah in order to we complement this zakat, because not all people are eligible to pay zakat. Remember that, because if you are rich, you got the wealth, you have to pay zakat. Okay, but if you are not, you don't have the wealth, you are not paying that. So in this case, we need sadaqah in order to supplement, because sadaqah can be paid by whether you are rich or you are poor. So it's not obligatory. It's a voluntary. So if you feel you want to help the country, you want to help the government, probably you can use sadaqah as a source of the as a fund in order to helping the society. So this is these are the two different things that we must know to differentiate between the two. That's I think my answers for that.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Jarita. Zakat is part of pillar of Islam, and wajib for every Muslim, and sadaqah is sunnah, Prof. Jarita. Okay, and the third question from Miss Winnie. I have a question about the goal of fiscal policy. Okay, from the explanation you have explained it before, are there any of the scope that you think are difficult to achieve?
All right, okay, that's a bit difficult question.
Difficult.
Because I think the government know how difficult it is to achieve the goal, actually, because it depends on their budget. Because basically, when you are implementing fiscal policy, the most important thing is whether you got a fund or not. That's the thing that you have to do. But anyhow, you need to achieve the economic goal. Definitely, when we talk about a goal, it's just like opportunity cost is there. It's the economy. When you achieve one, you might not achieve another one. There will be a trade-off. It's just that when you learn about, or you have economic growth, but you have inflation. You've got higher GDP, but you have price increase. Similar as a fiscal policy. There will be a trade-off sometimes. You can achieve one goal, you might not achieve another goal. So that's why priority is very important. So every country, when we talk about the goal, doesn't matter whether it's difficult or not to achieve, you must set a priority. Okay, which one that you want to achieve, dependent on your economy. For example, if your economy, you have a very high unemployment. So of course, your goal is to reduce this unemployment. So definitely the fiscal tools that you must use is to reduce the unemployment, the increase spending, increase aggregate demand so that people will have more job, more output produced. So these are the things that we have to make a priority, as a authority, as a government. The priority is very important depending on the economic situation. Depending on economic situation, depending on the fund that you have, because sometimes you don't have fund also, you have to know how to get the sources of the fund. So these are the things that we have to really look at as authority, as a government. Okay, because listing down the goal is very easy, but to achieve the goal is not as easy as a list. Okay, so that's why we must list down the priority, the first, the second, the third, so that we can achieve one by one, especially the first one.
Okay, thank you, Prof Jarita, for the answer from Miss Prof Jarita. Jadi dari pertanyaan tadi dari siapa tadi? Dari Mbak Winnie ya.
Mbak Winnie,
jadi, jadi memilih prioritas mana yang akan diselesaikan dalam jangka waktu terdekat, ya. Step by step, ya, sedikit demi sedikit prioritas tersebut yang akan dijadikan sebagai landasan pemerintah dalam memberikan kebijakan fiskalnya, gitu ya. Oke, and the next question from Nabila Kaula Sadida. Ini so long. Okay, historical government expenditure in Islamic economic was based on zakat and ghanimah, because they are both specific in the Al-Quran. So how to confess a non-Muslim at the time of Prophet Muhammad to pay zakat? Because Salim also pointed out 3 instances where the Prophet explained that the government cannot leftly and take order the zakat. And what if zakat is obligatory in big country and equal for everyone to pay zakat? So how to implement a zakat system? Thank you, Prof Jarita.
Okay, during Prophet times, this zakat has been implemented. Okay, but remember, zakat is only for Muslim, not for non-Muslim. Okay, only ghanimah is actually taken once there is a war between Muslim and the outsider or non-Muslim, and then the wealth from ghanimah are distributed and become a public revenue. Okay, so even the ghanimah also divided into few terms, such as like homes just now, there's a certain percentage. Because ghanimah basically is given to the soldier first, those who are fighting, and then after that it will be kept as a baitul mal, etc. So there are also components from the ghanimah. So basically what we say about this non-Muslim, non-Muslim are not imposed to pay zakat. Remember that, It's not imposed to pay zakat. During Prophet also, they are not paying zakat, only Muslim. Okay, so the non-Muslim only paying like poll tax just now. The one that which is we call it what? The poll tax here is because they are staying in a Muslim country, they are being protected by the Muslim government. They have to pay this tax. This poll tax, but not zakat. This is not considered as zakat. So you must differentiate between zakat, because zakat is obligatory only for Muslim, right? Even though we have non-Muslim in our country, they are not obliged to pay zakat. That's why we are creating this tax, so that this tax can be paid by the non-Muslim also. Okay, because last time we don't have this tax system, the current tax system, income tax, etc. But Prophet is only impose this poll tax. Poll tax is for the non-Muslim, and sometimes they also charge tax to the trader because of the export import. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is not considered zakat. Remember that this is not considered zakat, because zakat is only for Muslim only. Yeah, Muslim wealth only. All right.
Yes.
I
Okay.
hope it's clear. Yeah.
Yes, clear. Thank you, Prof Jarita. And the next question from Audrey. He asked a question: is raising the tax percent for the rich is the best solution for state revenue? Or
this is a very tricky question. If I say it wrong, it will be it will bet on me actually. Okay, actually, when we saying about tax system, tax system is that of course the tax is trying to redistribute income, redistribute income among the rich and the poor, so that we are trying to close the gap, between the rich and the poor. Okay, in other words, the tax percentage, depending on what types of tax imposed by the country, by the government. Remember, there are 3 types of tax. One, we call it progressive tax. One is proportional tax. The other one is the regressive tax. Okay, so I'm not sure whether what country is impose one, but I take example of Malaysia, Malaysia. I take example of Malaysia. They are imposing, government impose progressive tax. Okay, what is progressive tax? Tax is charging higher percent at higher income people. So meaning to say that if your income is certain bracket, okay, then you are imposed, let's say, 5% tax. But if your income bracket above, above than below lower bracket, you are charged with 10% tax. So this is progressive tax. Okay, why we need this progressive tax? Because logically it means that the higher the income people, they are the one that able to pay the tax. They are the one that able to pay the tax, and therefore we impose tax on them higher. But for the lower income people, they are not able to pay, so we charge lower tax. So this is fair, right? This is fair, considered as fair. Okay? Okay. Unless if you impose proportionate tax means the same rate. Whether you are higher income or lower income, you impose the same tax. Is it fair? This is not considered as fair, right?
Yeah,
so this is, in other words, it means that we have to look at whether the tax will be benefit which group of people. So if you think that the poor can be helped by the rich, okay, so the progressive tax is the best way. If the poor can be helped by the rich, it will be better to have progressive tax, so that the government is not going to burden to help the poverty people or the poor people. But if you think that the higher income group people are being treated unfairly because they have to pay higher tax, so in other words, it means that the government has to find another way how to change this tax system in such a way that everybody are contributing, not only the rich people, but also the government probably, or other organizations. So all this must be discussed among at the authority level to decide which tax is much better, much better to the society. But so far, most of the developed country, they are using this progressive tax, and that's why they have a very good, what we call it, benefit system. You can compare, for example, our country with European country, US. you can see that how they can even give benefit to the people unemployed. They can give benefit to the children. They can give a lot of scholarship, free education, free health services. You know where this money come from? Progressive tax. The higher income has been taxed very high compared to the lower income. So this is, in order to have a very good, what we call it, security system. I call it security because this is to secure the poor, right? In terms of their health, their education. The tax system is playing a very important role. Yeah. So not saying that, of course, some people are against this higher tax, yeah, especially for the higher income. Of course, definitely they are not agree with this. But this is the only way that how the government can redistribute, yeah, the income from the rich to the poor. Okay, so meaning to say that to have a very good, what we call it, security system in terms of health, education, etc. Progressive tax is very important in the developed country, and you can see that most developed countries impose this. Okay. In fact, Malaysia also trying to impose it, but we are still having very small percentage. At high, because this is something which is politic things lah. Because sometimes when you are imposing higher tax, you are not popular, right? Okay, you are not winning the election. So this is again another issue that we have to take into account. Yeah. So using taxes, sometimes you might not win the heart of the people. So this is also another thing that we have to take into consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Prof Jarita. And the Indonesian, maybe the different policy of the tax. Jadi di Malaysia itu ada pajak barang mewah yang dibebankan itu 100%, Prof.
Ya, betul.
Ada juga sekarang ini pajak pajak progresif juga itu untuk yang memiliki kendaraan mewah di atas 2 miliar. Wah. Juga yang punya pendapatan 5 miliar ini tinggi juga pajaknya.
Juga ya, betul.
35 sampai 40%, Prof. Per tahun.
Betul. Oh iya ke? Sama lah di Malaysia juga begitu. Sebab kebanyakannya yang tinggi taksnya adalah luxuries ya. Rumah-rumah mewah, kereta-kereta mewah. Ya. Kalau mengikut keadilannya memang patutnya dipajak kan. Jadi kita our concern is the necessities lah, itulah. As long as the necessity is protected, it can be secured. I think later on, if there is no poverty, the tax is not necessary actually. Because this tax it can be changed. Yeah, the tax can be changed. Yeah. So it actually can be only zakat is imposed by is compulsory, but it's considered as taxes is just an alternative for us to get the fund. So it's not necessary that we must impose it, and we can change it based on the condition actually. Yeah.
Okay. Prof Jarita, maybe is the last question, Prof Jarita. Because time is over. The last question from Halima. From Halima Tusadia. Thank you.
Halima, yes.
Thanks to Ms. Jarita for the presentation. Introducing myself is Halima Tusadia. I want to ask if a country has implemented both zakat and tax, the distribution will be evenly distributed to the community.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because that's the function of taxes and zakat actually. Okay, the zakat and taxes is to redistribute the income evenly. Okay, but we might not know how even it is. It's just that that's the tool that we can use, and we can see the implication of it by looking at later on the poverty line, whether there are a lot of people below poverty line or not. So We can always what we call revise our taxes, okay, so that we can look at the implication whether the poverty has been alleviated or not. If it's still not alleviated, so you can still change the taxes. So as long as it can until it's redistribute the income evenly to the society. Okay, because there's some country by having zakat they can already distribute the income equally to the community. Yeah.
Yes.
So even zakat is already enough actually. But on top of that, as I mentioned, taxes sometimes is required because of insufficient fund from zakat. Right.
Okay.
So then.
Okay. Thank you,
The
Prof.
next one.
Jarita. The next one.
Next
one more.
Yes.
It is
Nida.
from Nida Khofia, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Tax are not one of the biggest source of national income, but what will happen if tax continue to be raised so that people are in trouble?
I'm not really sure the question here. Taxes are one of the biggest sources of national income. But what will happen if tax continue to be raised so that people are in trouble? What does it mean by trouble? Okay, I will try to answer this. Yeah. Okay, if you're talking about taxes, taxes is a source of the government spending. It's a source, meaning to say the money, the fund for the government spending. But when we talk about national income are actually determined by expenditure, by government spending, by consumption, by investment, by investment. So if the taxes is imposed bigger, in other words, you are having more revenue. The government has more money. Yeah, they have more fund and they can spend more actually. Yeah, they can spend more and increase government GDP or national income. All right. So in other words, when you are talking about taxes, they are related to government spending. Okay. So it doesn't mean that when you are taxed, you are paying tax and tax. Okay, so the income is getting lesser. No, it doesn't mean that. Because when tax is imposed, the taxes will boost government spending. Of course, it's reduce your consumption. It will reduce the consumption, but the government spending will increase. All right. So this is where we have to look back at the aggregate expenditure model. Yeah. So you learn about the aggregate expenditure model. We can know that taxes will giving impact on consumption. Okay, but taxes also can become revenue for the government spending. So this is where we learn about budget, budget deficit, budget surplus. So directly, they are not actually giving impact on the national income. Yeah, they will giving impact on consumption, but then later on, indirectly, will giving impact on national income. So I don't think so that raise the taxes will be a big problem. Okay, because the taxes raise here if it's raised, it's a raise in terms of percentage, and those who are affected are those who have higher income. Yeah. But then for those lower income, definitely they are not being affected by these taxes, unless if the taxes is on goods and services. For example, GST, right? Everybody are affected. Okay, we need to say that all consumers are affected. All consumers have to pay tax, GST. Okay, that one is different. But when we talk about income tax, the income tax is affecting only higher income group people normally. Yeah, but not the lower income group.
Okay, yeah, okay, Prof Jarita Duasa. Karena keterbatasan waktu,
It's already 12.
Kita sudah masuk jam 11.30 ini, Prof Jarita.
Alright.
So finally, we thanks Prof. Dr. Jarita Duasa for such an interesting explanation for the sharing with us. Sebelum kita memasuki akhir acara, allow me to give some conclusion for our discussion today. Jadi ada beberapa kesimpulan yang bisa kita tarik pelajaran dari pemaparan yang disampaikan oleh Prof. Jarita Duasa. Ada banyak materi atau keilmuan yang bisa kita serap. Yang pertama dari pajak dan juga zakat, termasuk juga government expenditure atau pengeluaran pemerintah ya. Ada 3 kategori utama yang bisa kita jadikan sebagai landasan dalam pengeluaran pemerintah dalam ekonomi Islam. Yang pertama ini adalah pengeluaran pemerintah yang permanen, kemudian pengeluaran yang diperlukan dalam keadaan saat ini, dan pengeluaran dalam kegiatan yang lainnya. Kemudian ada prinsip-prinsip panduan Islam dalam pengeluaran pemerintah, termasuk ada yang pertama adalah moderasi dalam penganggaran, prioritas dalam pengeluaran, prinsip pendapatan dan pengeluaran publik. Kemudian ada 5 unsur dalam pendapatan dalam Al-Quran yang di situ disebutkan. Yang pertama adalah zakat, khums, pai, sedekah, dan juga borrowing atau pinjaman. Kemudian pemaparan selanjutnya dalam zakat sebagai ukuran fiskal, di sini ada 6 bagian ya, sehingga zakat ini menunjukkan keuntungan ya atau keunggulan atas pajak progresif. Ada 6 caranya di sini. Yang pertama adalah zakat memiliki dasar yang lebih luas daripada pajak, karena selain pendapatan juga dikenakan ada aset yang menganggur, dikenakan pajaknya, dikenakan zakat juga. Kemudian hasil zakat, yang kedua hasil zakat dapat disalurkan langsung kepada para asnaf, ada 8 asnaf yang wajib menerima zakat, terutama fakir miskin, ya, yang itu juga bagian dari asnaf yang menerima zakat. Ya. Kemudian yang ketiga, zakat dibebankan pada mereka yang mampu, ya, memiliki harta dan mampu. Kemudian yang keempat, sebagai bagian dari bagian dari agama, maka zakat harus dikumpulkan terlepas dari kondisi apapun, karena memang zakat ini adalah kewajiban individu setiap Muslim, ya. Kemudian yang kelima, ya, tarif pajak bersifat tetap, ya, tidak berubah dan tidak dapat diubah oleh penguasa karena sudah ditetapkan atau sudah diatur di dalam Al-Quran dan juga dalam Al-Hadis. Ya. Nah, itu beberapa kesimpulan atau conclusion for this guest lecture from Prof. Jarita. Okay, our participant in this section. Finally, I thank you also participants for such an active discussion and your participant and your question. Okay, Prof. Jarita and all participant, sebelum kita mengakhiri kegiatan presentasi dan juga acara kita pada siang hari ini juga, Prof. Jarita, alhamdulillah pada hari ini juga bertepatan Prof. Jarita tanggal 5 Juni 2021. Ini merupakan hari lahirnya juga Prodi Ekonomi Islam Prof. Jarita yang ke-18 tahun Prof. Jarita. Oh, iya. Jadi young, kita masih muda ini Prof.
18 ya?
Iya, 18 tahun Prof. Jarita.
Masih muda, ya, masih muda.
Kalau dilihat umur 18 ini masih tahap-tahap dewasa awal, Prof. Ya.
Betul. Remaja lagi.
Masih remaja ya, Prof. Ya. Alhamdulillah tanggal 5 Juni ini ada bertepatan juga dari Prodi Ekonomi Islam ulang tahunnya yang ke-18 ya. Kami berdiri di tahun 2003, Prof. Sekarang sudah 2021 dan kami memohon doa dari Prof Jarita dan kepada semuanya saja semoga Prodi Ekonomi Islam ini semakin tumbuh dan berkembang, semakin maju pesat dan dapat meluaskan kerjasama ya, baik di tingkat ASEAN dan juga di tingkat internasional dan bisa bersaing dalam pasaran internasional. Thank you, Prof Jarita and all participants. Finally, we reach to the end of this guest lecture. Thank you very much for your attention. Semoga apa yang kita pelajari pada pagi hari sampai siang ini bermanfaat dan diberkahi oleh Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Kita akhiri, Prof Jarita and all participants. Personally, I apologize if there are any mistake from me. Let's the end of this agenda by setting Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin and kafaratul majlis. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah wallahu a'lam bishawab. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Prof Jarita and all participants.
Terima kasih Pak Junaidi.
Terima kasih.